This is the Power of the Tribe podcast. I'm your host, John Connors. It is November 22nd, 2019. It's gray out, about 59 degrees.
Should you give away the date?
Dan, I thought I would start to do that so people... My son said our intros sound so similar that it gets confusing and people don't know if they've already listened to the episode. And we're just rambling on about the same crap every episode.
That's
anyways.
a good idea. You should
The
start
calendar.
shouting something different.
I
at the
figured
beginning
we
of
would
each
do that.
episode.
Yeah. Because I usually say, also the founder and head instructor of Connors Martial Arts. We teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, and mixed martial arts.
Maybe everyone knows that by now.
They might, but they should reach out to me, and I'll make their life better in some way.
That is true.
I don't know how, but it'll happen.
No, have people come to the gym and had their life worse?
Besides me? No, I mean, no one has. You're absolutely right. We did cover that one day.
It's
a can't miss.
Lose.
There's not a lot of guarantees in life, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Taxes, death, and a benefit when you come to
taxes
Connors
aren't
Martial Arts.
guaranteed.
That's right.
And I'm not sure death is guaranteed.
Right. We could be in a simulation, and we're never really going
Right.
to die, right?
But improving your life by going to Connors MMA,
Right.
guaranteed.
If you come, you will no longer be an NPC. Do you know what that is, Dan? NPC?
Non-participating.
Dimitri, you know what it is, right? Yeah.
I forgot.
Non-player character.
Oh, yeah. I knew it. I
So-
forgot it's one of these things.
If you were not an NPC, you would know it. I think you might be an NPC.
Maybe.
No, you're not.
No, I know that. I remember the expression, but I forgot it. I didn't catch my memory.
Right. So if you come to Connors, we will make you a
Make you
a playing character, not a non-playing character.
right.
Yeah. You'll start having agency in your life.
Right.
Like that book, The
I'm
Power of
probably an
Agency.
NPC now that you put it that way. But agency in your life.
Yeah, so I would say it's unseasonably warm today.
Yes. By the way, I am a
What?
ballpark 7 out of 10.
You're all right. Good callback.
Yeah.
I like the Connors hoodie too, by the way. You
Yeah.
look pretty
And I'm
spiffy
wearing
in that.
the Connors hoodie. I got all kinds of sort of iconic show stuff today.
Nice.
Connors hoodie, 7 out of 10.
Right.
We'll break them out throughout the course of the podcast.
And tomorrow my team is going to compete at Tap Cancer Out tournament.
That's tomorrow.
That's
I
tomorrow.
lost track.
And if Dimitri remembers, we had John from Tap Cancer Out on
Great
here.
guy
Very good guy.
and an amazing tournament.
It's a great tournament. I think we have 15 people participating. So
Some percentage of the proceeds, or as much as he can, right, goes to...
I think most of it goes to
Yeah.
cancer research. So
Yeah, he was on the podcast. I don't remember exactly what he said, but his motivation was entirely to try to give back. And so there's a jiu-jitsu tournament, and he gives back most or all of the proceeds, or like whatever it's not a for-profit thing.
yeah,
And he gives it to different organizations.
it's very cool. And
So who's
pretty excited.
competing? I know
a lot
Rory,
of people. Rory has a showcase match,
right?
and he raised over $2,000. So that's pretty
Nice.
cool.
Oh, he met the goal.
I believe he surpassed the goal, and I think he was the number one fundraiser. I think as an individual. I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how do you get a showcase match? That's something probably people don't know, like, because they happen all the time, but I don't know how they get offered, or
I
like.
think you have to throw your name in the hat, let them know that you're available, and
And then
they hook you
whoever
up.
the organizer is of the tournament looks at the names and
Yeah, and looks
sees
for
if they can set
looks for a
something up.
match. Yeah. So he's competing against some young man, I think out of Timberells in Rhode Island. So this should be a great match. Yeah. I'm sure the guy's got great skills. Yeah.
Sure.
And I was just training with Rory a little this morning. So I feel good. I got a little training in. Yeah. He's a killer. Whew.
Roughly how many people from the gym are competing? Just ballpark.
15.
15?
Didn't I just say that?
No.
I totally did. You're not listening.
No,
Dan.
I wasn't paying attention. Did you say that? Maybe you
I
just
thought
thought
I
it.
said- Maybe I just thought it. I don't know. Yeah. I think there's 15.
I don't know. It's on
believe.
tape, so
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to look good. But
I thought I said it, but
one of us isn't going to look good.
one of us
I
is going to look
suspect
like a
it's me.
doddering, dribbling
I suspect
old
it's me.
fool. Yeah. 15. Yeah. So you said who? It's going to be tough for me to rattle it off
Well,
the
you
top
don't
of my
have to
head.
rattle off. That's
Tin is also has a showcase match.
nice.
Let's see who else. Rob Curran, super fan of
Yeah.
the podcast. He's competing. He's a great guy.
How you doing,
he'll
Rob?
Do well.
Tim,
Tim McCarthy,
right?
yeah, handsome as he goes by. I just saw him today. He's competing. He'll do great. Ierardi,
Right.
who I would consider a super fan of our podcast as well.
He listens
I think
to
he
every
does.
show.
I hope he does. Well, he'll
You
start
should
doing
be.
it
You
now.
should listen to every show. By the way, those of you who are not listening to every show, you really should. You're missing out on a lot of the through conversation.
I think so.
If you miss one, you might find yourself lost.
Definitely.
Like I'm not getting the references.
You're not getting the callbacks.
Why is he saying 7 out of 10, for example? So,
And he
yes,
never asked John how he's doing.
I've noticed.
He never asked
Yeah.
him. So self-absorbed. Am I still trying to remember? Let's see who else. Kevin Malloy was a white belt that trains in the evening. He's a great competitor.
Right
He'll
after
do
it.
well.
Yeah.
Who else? Let's see. I can't remember.
You're just
a bunch of
blanking
guys.
people.
Yeah.
Are there women competing?
Are there women competing? I think Maria might be competing. Yeah.
She
Maria's-
competes so often, it's
yeah.
hard to keep track.
Yep. Dan Kennedy. Do you know Dan?
Yeah.
Great guy. He's competing. He'll do really well. Oh my gosh. His jiu-jitsu is great. Billy Giovanella. He's
Billy's
competing.
Constant competitor.
He's just a whirlwind.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's out of control. He's
He's-
rededicated in the last year, it seems to
you
me.
ever heard
He's
that
just-
expression? They got a lot of plates spinning.
Yeah.
He's actually spinning plates. Like
like literally.
he's literally.
He works
spinning
in a
plates.
restaurant, and he's spinning plates, and he's got a lot of them.
He's got a lot of them going. Let's see. Young Robert Wingert, young 15-year-old white belt, is a great,
15 and
nice
already
young man. He's
getting to
out
the
there
tournament.
competing.
Nice.
We've got a lot of guys. I can't
Are there people
remember.
listening like John didn't say me?
I know
No,
that's
is
what's
that the
going to
problem?
happen.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm sure
A
there
bunch
could be
of-
very obvious and prominent competitors that are just not occurring at this second.
Yeah, all great people. They're all going to do well. I'm going to be there coaching them, cheering them on.
Do you ever have two competitors going at the same time? You
Yeah.
have to decide who to coach.
I do.
Is it often just like who you're closer to or who you're, standing, like literally?
That's who I
standing?
like better.
Oh, yeah.
I have my favorites. No, I don't know. I think what I try to do is I try to go to the person who probably needs my coaching most.
Which still is not an insult, right? It could be like,
No, it's not an insult.
it
Not
could
at
be
all.
like given that exact situation,
Could be
and the
that
match they're in, who you feel.
yeah,
would
they may
benefit
have
the
less
most.
experience competing, so I want to give them some support. They may have a particularly challenging match. Maybe they're
Right.
in the finals. I want to give them my support. The other way I decide is, well, I've already coached this guy a couple of matches. I haven't coached this person yet, so I'm going to go over there and coach them.
Right.
And there's a whole art to coaching too, of course. I try not to overcoach. I don't like that when I see people take your left hand, grab the sleeve, and your right toe should be pointing this way. It's a little silly.
That's interesting because then I never heard of that part of bad coaching because usually it's the opposite. It's like, get out of there.
Oh, right.
Something, and the person underneath is like, I'd love to, but you're not giving me specific information. But you're saying you can also do too specific where you're like, look.
I think so,
let them
although I
try to
see
get out.
people give specific information. So last Friday, we were up at BJJ Fanatics tournament. Tyler King got invited to that tournament with some of the best grapplers in the world. Super exciting submission-only tournament. And we got a chance to see Gordon Ryan was coaching Nicky Rodriguez, just 2 feet away from me in a match. So I was intrigued to hear how
Yeah.
he would coach and what he would say. And he was actually, Dan, he was pretty specific, but it was sort of an encouraging way. He would say, or get inside position. Then he'd say, let's get the body lock, start passing. So it was specific, but not overly specific. But I think the guy wasn't listening to him verbatim. He really wasn't doing exactly what. And if Gordon Ryan was coaching me, the guy is the top grappler in the world right now. I would do everything he said to do. Yeah.
Right. But isn't that's an interesting side of coaching too, where we all know at the highest level, like the professional fights, or televised fight, pay-per-view, you see people just not listening. And I think it's fair enough often, right? It's sort of, you're in the arena and you're like, I can't, it's saying like, shoot. And you're like, I'm too tired. Or like you feel like.
Sometimes that's it. I think this is a good question, Deanne. I think some of it is based on the relationship between the coach and the athlete. So I have some athletes that I train with and I coach so much that they can pick my voice out of a crowd and they understand what I'm trying to tell them. So they don't have to interpret my words that much. They know exactly the point I'm trying to make. So my son does an excellent job of hearing my coaching and responds to it pretty good. Jesse McElligott, too, always did well. Matt Tullos, they could hear me and follow the instruction pretty well. But if it's somebody who I don't coach a lot, then maybe it's a little bit more difficult for them, or if they're a less seasoned competitor also.
So I'm backed up a little with questions. Do you think there's ever a situation, there must be, where even one of the guys you mentioned, so someone you're close with and trusts you and have a good relationship, where you can give advice and they have a good reason for not following?
Oh, yeah.
They're sort of like,
Yeah.
John doesn't know my shoulder hurts, or, I don't know.
Yeah,
Is there something,
I think so.
Or I just don't feel like I can do it. Like you can yell, go for a sweep or something. Is like, I don't think I can do it. And like something that they're feeling that you can't see from the side, or like.
I think so. They could feel their competitor's weight is in a certain place that it's not viable, what I was saying or something. Yeah, that's possible.
Or that you just can't tell how tired they are. Or you can't tell.
That's usually not an issue. No. And that's
you think it's just more like it's something that they feel that you can't see from the side.
Yeah. They can't get the position exactly that they want to start, or the grip that they want, or something. Yeah.
And does it ever happen where someone's not listening and you're like, why aren't they listening? Like that must happen.
That happens. Yeah.
You're like,
yeah.
Why aren't they? Why are they not doing what I just said? Like,
especially when it goes completely wrong because they didn't listen to you. Then you're like, why the hell am I even here if they're not going to listen to me? Yeah, it's frustrating.
What do you think about this with jiu-jitsu? That I reached a point where I thought it was a good thing to do, to not necessarily follow instincts when you're rolling. And what I mean is this, like whenever you're rolling, like little kids can wrestle, you sort of feel where your weight goes and you feel like it's very natural. And I started reaching a point where sometimes it feels like I just know that I'm supposed to go for this underhook. I'm going for it. Like it doesn't necessarily feel quite right, but I'm going to do the technical thing here. Like, do you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's like, I just know I'm supposed to block that knee. It doesn't feel quite like what I want to do, but I want to just go through what I've been told to do. Is that right or wrong? Or what do you think about that? Like, or maybe for the better athletes, the more experienced, it always lines up. You're always like, what I feel like doing is the technical thing. But I think for newer people, sometimes it's like,
I think the
it's
newer
counterintuitive.
people should do the technical thing, what the instructor is advising them. And then based on the result, they can, modify what they're doing after that.
Because I think that's one thing, because I read this online where someone was saying, jiu-jitsu, it's very intuitive. You do what feels right. And I think it's the opposite when you're beginning, where it's like, there's not opposite. That's wrong. But very often it's not what you feel like doing. It's sort of, so if someone's new and you do what you feel like, maybe you thrash around and do nothing effective. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think it's part of the problem is the word intuitive.
Yeah.
It's too vague and it's not defined precisely.
And it's going to be different from person to person, how athletic you are. And
your so-called intuition is just, what's being intuitive? It's like your subconscious feelings about things. And that's not a single thing. It's a competition of different concepts and ideas. I kind of feel like this seems to be the winning feeling of all those competing feelings I'm having. Is there wisdom in that? I don't necessarily think so.
Not if you're new, especially.
What I think they're trying to say is when an athlete is performing at the highest level of their sport or martial art, then their body is obviously moving in a very natural way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're generating the most efficiency, the most power, but it's not something that somebody can spontaneously arrive at. And they likely have to spend years of training in order to hone in on
I would even put it this way. If someone's new to jiu-jitsu's, or any of these combat sports, are designed to take advantage of what people would naturally do, right? Like it's sort of like,
All right.
if someone's natural thing is to stick their arm up, then you're going to get arm barred, or you know what I mean? Like
Right.
someone's natural thing is to grab like this, you're going to get underhooked, or you're going to get kimura, or you know what I mean? Like the idea of jiu-jitsu, how it started was how to take advantage of the way people naturally would fight you.
Yeah, I
You
think,
know?
I mean, if you want to be scientific, you need an experiment with controls. So I got to do something and know what I'm doing and get a result from that and then adjust according to whatever results I'm getting. If I'm just doing something different all the time, then I have nothing to compare my results with. It doesn't make any sense. Do you follow? Yeah. So, and then there's different ways you could train, Dan. You can train in sort of a slower modality, more methodically, and you can watch what you're doing and tinker with the position and the weight and your posture and feel where the leverage is coming from. And then there's other times when you can go at a speed where it's very fast. It's a competition speed where you're just going. You're just free flowing and going from one thing to the next, which is where your highest performance is going to come from. But you may be moving so fast that you can't gather feedback to improve or modify what you're doing. Does that make am I clear? So what I do sometimes with people, my son or somebody, will flurry and we'll go at it for like a minute, and something will happen. He'll sweep me, or maybe I pass his guard. Something result comes from it, and then I might want to stop and examine what just happened. Like, why did I get swept? What do I need to do differently so I don't get swept? So then I like training that way sometimes because I get the benefit of going at a full competition speed, but I also get effective feedback that I can modify what I'm doing so I can improve. Yeah. That's ultimately the whole beauty of jiu-jitsu is feedback. You know, you're training, quote unquote, live, some version of live, 100% or 80% against a resisting opponent, and then you're getting feedback so you can modify what you're doing. That's pretty much been proven to be the most effective learning methodology, is doing something, getting feedback, and then adjusting.
Right. And when you're coaching, so now back to coaching, you're, do you ever, like, I'm just curious because I've never really, I think most of us haven't thought about coaching. Like probably a large percentage of the people listening have competed.
Okay.
And not competed or, trained.
Right.
But very few have coached. Is that fair?
I think that's very fair to say.
So it's sort of interesting to me. Like I haven't thought too much about it. And do you have, so is there a wide, like, are there matches that you watch and you're like, I don't have a lot to say, or like, do you always have a ton to say, or like, how's it go?
Well, I try not to give away too much information. So my typical thing when somebody starts a match is I'll say, let's go, let's get your grips, let's get right into it. So I'm encouraging our athlete to be aggressive and get after it, but I'm not revealing what their strategy is. Do you follow me?
Yeah. That's another thing I wondered, because you see that even again at the highest level at the UFC or whatever, coaches yelling things to do, and it's like, well, the other guy can hear.
I think so.
What you're saying, right?
So
some of them do codes, but do you do that at all? Like code?
I don't do codes, but I just speak in abstract terms. So, they're in their guard. It's like, let's get your guard going. What do you want to do? Break their posture. Let's go. Then they throw up a triangle. Then I'll get more specific. Then I'll say, hold their head down, pull their head down. Keep your knees in the right place. Start to cut an angle. Then once we're into it, then I could give specific details. And the other time you can give very specific details is if they're defending a submission, then the game is on. There's no suspense. One guy's trying to choke the other guy out, so we got to tell our guy exactly what he needs to do to defend. So those are the time when more information. And then there's a lot of key times, believe it or not, Dan, is when you're just kind of encouraging them. It's, you're just hitting them with the riding crop a little bit. You just say, go, 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 go. And there'll be that moment where if they just go, they can score a couple points.
I remember we've talked about it before, that I've experienced it. And I guess with you, I've seen it and experienced it. I've seen it with when my son was doing jiu-jitsu and for myself. And it seems crazy. It seems weird maybe, or counterintuitive, that it can be like, I'm almost sweeping, and then someone like you yells, go, 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 go. And then you finish the sweep.
Yeah.
And it seems weird because it's like, why wouldn't you just finish it anyway? Like, why did you need someone to yell? but it seems to work that way pretty often where
It
you
does,
can't,
yeah.
maybe you can't quite feel that you're close,
Yeah,
but someone watching sees
Yes.
that you're close. Is
Yes.
that what it is? You know,
Definitely.
so
definitely. There's a little uncertainty and a little hesitation.
like you're
and-
tired and you're like, I'm never going to get out.
Or
But
even
the
if you're
person watching
passing,
is like, you're really close to
Yeah.
getting out, or you're close
Yes.
to, you know, and but
Yeah.
you can't feel it.
Yeah, definitely.
You think that's what happens? And then,
Yeah.
Because
That's
I've seen
exactly
it
it.
a lot. We're just yelling like, keep going, like,
Yeah,
or like you're going to give up on a submission,
right.
but the person watching can see that it's actually close.
Yeah, that's definitely. I've had coached people, and I think one time I was coaching Maria, and she had a choke applying, and I could see her starting to go, "Oh, this isn't working." About to switch, and I was like, "No,
Yeah.
stay with that. Keep doing that. Keep doing it." And then she got the tap. Yeah. So
Isn't that a thing? Don't people give up on submissions probably too quickly for the most part?
sometimes that's the whole thing about jiu-jitsu. You know, you're attempting something, and you're going to complement it with something else. So you have to make an assessment. Is it time to transition to something else, or is it time to keep pressing on with this one technique? And that's a subjective thing. That's only could be answered in context with experience.
Because I'd say on both sides, I've had very often someone's close with some submission and then they give up, and they're like with the choking with me,
Yeah.
they're like, "You're unchokeable," and I'm like, "Thank God I was this close." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I was this close to tapping, and then they're like, "Why can't I choke you?" And I'm like, "Because you just stopped." You
Yeah.
know, like I was this close to tapping. And then on the other side, though, I think there's a sort of an unfair practice thing practice norm where you don't want to be rude. Like for me, it was always the north-south choke. Like I have trouble finishing it. And I just kind of got their head smushed under me.
Yeah.
And I'm squeezing their head. And they can't get out. You know what I mean? Like it's a tough one to
It's
get out.
hard to
from.
get out once you sink it
Yeah.
in, but you don't have any visual cues, any feedback
Right.
to how effective you're
Right.
strangling them. Yeah.
And so then, like it happened to me with that one in particular, I don't know, a dozen times or dozens of times where I'm just smashing this person's face. I feel like this is like a mean roll. So I stop, and then a bunch of times someone will be like, why'd you stop? Oh, you almost had me. And when then you stopped, and I'm like, oh, well, you know, like,
Yeah.
so I've been on that side of it too, where I'm probably competing. I just would not stop or let them out. You
Right.
know what I mean? But practice is different, where we stop a lot. We stop a lot of submissions when it feels like you're being too.
I think that brings up a subtle question, Dan. Sometimes people will tap before you're properly applying a stranglehold on them. So you get bad feedback. I got him. I was in the right place. And then then you're in competition and the person's resisting and they don't tap. And you're like, what's going on? Everyone in the gym taps to this. So you got to be careful with that. That's a little tricky.
I always thought people tap too fast at chokes. Like they just don't know they could have lasted longer.
I think so, but it's not completely unreasonable.
You don't want to go to sleep either. So
They don't want to go to sleep. They don't want to hurt themselves. They don't want to hurt their neck. They got a job to do and they're a parent or whatever. So if their neck starts hurting, they just tap, which is perfectly reasonable. But from a competitor's standpoint, the competitor then might be getting bad information.
another thing we've all seen is, I didn't actually do this, but the very, very brand new students, they just tap when they just don't know that there's no reason to tap there. Like they just tap from when you're like not doing anything.
That was like the boxer in UFC 1, right? Art Jimerson got mounted, and he was just like...
Tap to mount,
Yeah, he didn't know what was going to happen. He thought he might die or something. I don't know. And he tapped,
Yeah.
And they didn't know what to do about
now,
it.
right? Like you've got side control and you just suddenly feel a tap and you're like, did you tap? Or like you start sinking in a choke and they tap and you're like, I wasn't choking you yet. Like,
you
just have to learn. That happens in that direction too. And then there's the opposite. I've had new guys that won't tap. And you like have something like an Americana and you're like got their arm half broken and they're not tapping and you're like, well, what do I do? You know, like what? You just have to let it go. I guess
move on.
To do.
Yeah.
But then they're getting wrong feedback too, right? They're sort of like, I was able to get out of that.
Yes.
But I'm not going to break their arm just to give them the correct feedback. I'd put someone to sleep to give them the right feedback, though.
I think so. I think that's the way to do it.
I wouldn't have any issue with putting someone to sleep, but I'm not going to break in someone's arm or leg or something.
Yeah. Probably not the way to go.
Yeah, not just to teach them when to tap.
That is the funny thing about jiu-jitsu is sometimes people fall in this trap where maybe they're a white belt or a new blue belt and they're training with other white belts and they start doing something and they get a positive result, but what they're doing isn't really technically correct. So when they do it against a higher belt, it just works against them.
Well, that's part of all training, right? Like that's rampant, right? Probably everyone has some degree of that, some level of that. We've learned something that works, but it's not a long-term good strategy.
Yeah.
I think.
And the challenge, it gets into your nervous system,
Yeah.
and then you want to do it. It becomes a reflex. That's very tricky. That's why you need good instruction, I guess. You need that both the live training, but you also need the feedback and live training, but you also need some expert instruction to help you fall for fewer of those mistakes.
It's hard to stop because you're like, maybe it'll work, right? It's not like now I know this they'll never work, so I have to stop.
Here's another thing I've experienced, Dan. An athlete in competition does something that's not the best technique, not the best approach, and it works and they win. Now it gets seared into their system, and they might not even do it in practice, but they get competing again, they get in a similar situation, and they go for it. And they can get, and it could work against them, but they'll keep going for it because it worked that one time. It's almost like a slot machine that paid off once, and they just keep pumping more nickels.
But it's tricky, right? Because it's not necessarily, it's not stupid, right? You're like, maybe it worked once, maybe it'll work again. It's like,
well, it's ill-advised because there's some things that we can look at with some expert sort of objective viewpoint and say, this isn't good
low
strategy.
percentage.
We shouldn't be doing this. Let's do this
right.
instead here.
Because it's all percentages, right? Like all of life.
So.
It's just percentages and odds. And you want to do what's the highest likelihood for victory.
Yes, definitely. That's huge. I've noticed that recently. Strategy is very important.
So are you going is it tomorrow morning?
Tomorrow morning, probably like the first matches are at noontime maybe.
Where's it being held?
It's at St. John's Prep in Danvers.
I always forget. I was about to say, so anyone who wants to go, I forgot this is coming out.
Yeah, this won't come out until in a week or so. Yeah.
We'll know how it goes. But it's can't lose. That's what I love about Tap Cancer. Like you raised money for cancer. It's not.
It'll be a great day.
It's not just about how your performance. Everyone wants to perform well, but win or lose, you raised all this money for cancer research.
But that's not to say they're not competitive. I think people are fighting just as hard as they would in any other tournament. So it'll be a great day. The guys will have a good experience.
The nature of anyone going to a tournament is probably a competitor and wants to win.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Definitely.
I was thinking an offshoot of that up at the gym, and I think we've touched on it where, again, so I came earlier today, I was at the dentist, right?
Okay.
I'll tie it back in 1 second.
No worries.
Which is, they told me again, I hadn't heard this specifically, but I touched on it.
All right.
Where you could, I'm sure it's the same everywhere. So anyone could ask their dentist. They say there are people routinely who ask for anesthesia for a cleaning. Like if they're going to get their teeth cleaned, they ask to have the mouth numb. Mm-hmm. And I was staggered by it. I'm like, literally for a cleaning. And then what I brought up with you before was I don't get the painkiller for cavities being filled. And to me, it's a no-brainer. I can't imagine anyone feels differently. I'm like, what I said was, if it really hurts, I'll say, hey, this is killing me. Give me the painkiller. But barring that, if it's just little tings of pain, forget it. So that whole thing happened, and then I said, I imagine they said, "Wow, you didn't get the painkiller." And I said, "Well, isn't that everybody?" And he said something like 98% of people get the painkiller to get a cavity filled. And I was like,
that sounds right.
That's crazy. I didn't I had no thought at all that I was like doing some 2% thing. You know what I mean? I was like, I thought anyone would do this.
Yeah.
So for everyone, because a lot of people listening go to an MMA gym, this is the abstract point I'm getting at, that I was reminded again that if you're someone like what it came from is if you go into the tournament, you're a competitor. And if you go to an MMA gym and or Brazilian, or you're doing jiu-jitsu, you're automatically in this small percentage of people that is doing something that a huge number of people would never do and could never do. And what I meant was this: what the abstract point, how I'm relating it to the dentist is, you don't feel like you're being tough. You don't feel like you're doing anything, and you're not. So I still sort of think you're not, but it's like the rest of humanity are like not doing. You know what I mean? Like their standard is, to me, is so low that it's like you actually are doing something. What I mean is, most people need painkiller to get their teeth cleaned, and you're training jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you're saying the average American around here is pretty soft, is what you're saying. I think.
I'm trying to be nice about it, but incredibly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think what happens is there's lots of people at the gym going, I'm not doing anything tough. I mean, obviously there's guys at the gym that are like, I am a tough guy.
I was at the periodontist a while ago, and there was a guy about my age in front of me, and he just finished, and he freaking flipped out. He was like, "Where's my prescription for painkillers?" And the woman behind the desk was like, "No, we don't always give painkiller prescriptions. Just take these Tylenol or whatever." And the guy was flipping out. I thought they were going to have to call the cops and drag him out of
just
there.
for like the post-op pain, he needed a prescription.
And he was so agitated.
I've never needed post-op painkillers in my life, except one time I had like a vicious tooth thing, like really, really bad. My whole face swole up.
Pain is tricky, right? Because
I get these prescriptions. I don't take them because I don't need it.
But it's very subjective, right? Maybe you're not a rugged person. Maybe you just don't register pain with the same intensity as another person, right? You can never know, right?
There's no way to know, right?
I don't think so. It's so subjective. So last week, Tyler was competing, and the guy did an inside heel hook, and Tyler broke his fibula. So that's a small bone on your lower leg.
And you were coaching him.
I was coaching him.
Did you hear it break?
Dan, it sounded like somebody took a tree branch the thickness of a baseball bat and cracked it over a boulder. It was like,
so just to set the scene, Tyler's caught in a heel hook.
The guy sort of had a straight ankle lock, and Tyler was escaping, but his other foot got left behind. And the other guy is very good grappler.
And I imagine a gigantic guy.
He's a big guy, yeah. And big arms, big legs. Like he's kind of heavy. I don't know exactly how heavy he is, but a good athlete, good grappler, big dude, and crafty at leg locks. And he caught Tyler inside heel hook. And I think there was nothing wrong with what happened, but I think Tyler might have tapped just as it broke, like simultaneously. Because I think he said
you see this gigantic guy
twisting,
and
it
then
goes,
you hear like a snap.
Not a snap.
Yeah.
I would not say snap, like a barack, like a loud cracking sound. And his foot was turned 180 degrees backwards. And I was like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to get up and his leg was going to be like lying next to him. And Tyler's such a trooper. He's like, I'm fine. And he stands up, and I go to the EMT. I'm like, you got to get out there. Did you hear that? And he kind of walks off, and he's walking on his feet gingerly. And we don't know what the nature of the injury was at the time. And he's like, no, I'm fine. And we went to the hospital, got an X-ray, and they said he broke his fibula. I think down at the bottom where it approaches the ankle. Am I violating some confidentiality by talking about this? I don't think Tyler cares, right? But
it's all to his credit.
But he's a trooper. They're like, Dan, the whole experience, he never like made a single sound of discomfort.
Or expression. You know what I mean? He didn't grimace.
Expression, never. He never went like, oof, nothing, zero. And
it's a different breed.
And he has the same injury on his other leg, I guess. So I think it turned out.
So he's sure he's like, another broken fibula.
I think it ended up being the best injury he could have had in that situation.
Because it wasn't his knee, or
it wasn't his knee or ankle. His joints didn't get damaged, I don't think. So it ended up being kind of a small blessing in a way.
But you're saying that's not tough because he didn't register the pain.
No. I don't know what pain he registered. They asked him on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you, when we went to the hospital, and he said 6, I think. And then
about a 7.
Then the doctor put a cast on. And he like wrapped his foot up in a cast. And the doctor was like, wow, you must be pretty rugged, because usually people are whining and crying when I'm doing this. And like Tyler was like, the guy was tying his shoe. Like
fair,
the guy wasn't even paying attention to it.
To be fair, if you're the doctor looking at Tyler, wouldn't you be like, I'm not that shocked that you're like tougher than most? I mean, does he not have a look to him that like I'm
just saying though, the doctor
like,
took the time to mention that though.
Yeah.
I was like, huh, yeah. So
you're saying, but so there's this dichotomy of how much you feel it and how much you resist it. And, yeah, but who knows what
I have no
means.
idea. But
well, that's another thing that I've said. People like when they hear you train. So you must hear some version of this, or everyone listening hears some version of this, of like something about, are you tough, or does that mean you're tough? And I think people that train realize that they don't know what tough means anymore. Like tough is not, it's a too broad a term. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't, like if you're a little tiny person that's scared and couldn't fight at all and hasn't trained, but someone beats you with a brick and you don't react at all and you're fine, that's tough, right? Like, but if you're someone that's like what if you're a world-class winner, UFC champion, but if you stub your toe, you cry, you're still tough. Like, do you know what I mean? Tough is a very broad term. I don't know what it means anymore even. You know what I mean?
It's very subjective. Pain itself is so subjective. Somebody was telling me about somebody they knew that had some disorder where they can't pinpoint any physical manifestation, but they're in chronic, excruciating pain.
That's great.
It's awful, right?
Isn't that, hell, wouldn't that be what that is?
Yeah, I don't know, man.
They just have constant pain, excruciating pain at all times.
I think the nervous system is very complicated, right? Very complex. So I don't think science has figured everything out yet about that and about pain. So tricky.
That's got to be sitting there like, oh, that's great. Like, why am I in this terrible pain? Like, it's just something that
we don't know
is going to happen forever.
Yeah.
Like, oh, great.
Not good. Yeah.
And then we've talked. I think we've actually talked on here a long time ago about there was a woman in some Northern European country that was like, couldn't feel any pain, like it was impossible for
something like that. Like she didn't have her amygdala didn't work well, and she didn't feel pain, so she would like break bones all the time, right?
So that's a perfect example of what I'm saying about tough. Like you could hold a cigarette lighter under her hand and burn her flesh and she wouldn't react. Is she tough? Like sort of.
That's a really philosophical question, Dan, and very interesting. I think about that myself a lot, and I think about it in terms of courage, because courage ultimately is sort of a spiritual question. It's so subjective, right?
Right.
Like, does somebody have the courage to speak in front of a group, to go skydiving, whatever it is? I guess you could say courage is the differential between action and fear. Like they fear this much, but they're going to act beyond that. That differential is the courage, right?
Sort of, but
it's
like,
unknowable. I'm not saying you could ever know it.
But if you fearlessly charge into combat, then you'd have no courage. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, in a way, that's why I'm saying you can't. You can't even define it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
very tricky.
It doesn't make any sense, like in that way, because I've also just your examples. I've done that. I've spoken in front of hundreds of people, and I was nervous, and then I was skydiving, and I wasn't nervous, and I don't know. You know, no one's not more brave than another. I don't know. That's why I said for me, I end up throwing out the idea of being
so
brave. So
you just throw out the idea of courage and bravery.
In a way, yeah. I mean, I almost, the only way it's alive for me is when you see the opposite. When you see people that like won't help an old lady that's getting mugged, or you know what I mean? Like, or the people that won't, Dan, shocking examples of cowardice. Well, I guess I believe in cowardice, but not so much courage.
Can you have one without the other?
I don't know. I'd have to.
Very tricky. We're getting deep philosophically here, Dimitri. It's amazing. Yeah.
But do you know what I mean about how you can't define it? Because there's so, like, do you know what I mean? Like I said, if someone could be a war hero charging machine gun nests, and if they don't feel anything, are they still brave? Well, they still are, right? Obviously, but
like that guy we talk about, the free solo, Alex Honnold. Right. He's climbing this stuff free solo. It's terrifying. You know, his life is at risk for 3 hours or whatever it took for him to get up the mountain. Was it 3 or 4 hours? Yeah. And one mistake and it's all over. but then they look at his amygdala and it functions very differently than almost
He's
everyone
not
else on the
feeling
planet.
it, but he's obviously in his own way brave. And then think of the opposite extreme. If someone's terrified to walk outside, but they walk outside, you're like, you're super brave. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, yeah, I guess, but it doesn't sound that brave. It almost has to come down to actions. And that's, so tie back to jiu-jitsu. We've said that versions of this a bunch of times. Like, you walked in the door, you're doing it. Less than 1% of people do it. I think people deserve a pat on the back, right? Like, it's sort of like,
I think so,
and I don't
yeah.
mean it to like,
I guess
either be nice to people listening or to talk up the gym or to talk up, you know what I mean? I think it's legit. I think you deserve a pat on the back. You walked in the door, 1% of people do it.
Well, here's another thing, Dan. You know, it comes back to our idea about committed to the process. If we're in the process of development, it doesn't really matter where we are as long as we're making progress. And then that's right no matter what our thoughts of bravery or cowardice is. You know what I mean? If we're trying to expand ourselves, you know what I mean? We're trying to do a little bit more than we feel our capacity is. That's always going to be good, right?
Right. Or so
I had a woman I met that she said, "Oh, I'm thinking about doing this, but she goes, I'm overweight." She really wasn't. I wouldn't classify her as like unusually overweight. She says, "What do you do when you get somebody like me?" And my answer was, we're all at a different place. We just want to make progress from the point we are today. That's all that matters, you know.
in both. So I'd say, I would argue that there's the two main points that we've ever talked about on this podcast are apply here. One is process, where it's like, what about someone like me and I'm overweight? It's like all that's gone if you just think of process, right? Like just think of what should I do to get better myself. Who cares about where you are if you're overweight, or what do you do with people? Like, here's the things I should do. And tied in is this idea of emotion and like stifling that what I mean is this, like when we first brought it up on this podcast, it was jiu-jitsu advice, which was talk positively to yourself. Don't be like, I'm so exhausted, I'm gassed out. You were saying, just say like, I'm winded. The extension of that, and getting a little different, but is tamp down the drama. Like, you know, so don't, like, in general, you don't help yourself when you're like, if you leave, you're like, I suck, I'm miserable. Like, none of that helps. Like, whenever you up that drama to yourself, it never helps. And so then at a lower level, when you're like, I'm overweight, I can't, it's like, tamp down the drama and just like calm down, say calm things to yourself and move on. And like, if you, and go on with your life and do what you want to do and train if you want to train. And I think people tie themselves up all the time with drama. And we've put it different ways. We've said, be like Mr. Spock. We've said, don't be in touch with your emotions. We've like, but I think there's this common theme of like talking to yourself in a dramatic way that I'm getting more and more against. I thought of it like, or like if I'm on the treadmill and you're like, oh my God, I'm in agony. And if I just say to myself, like, you're not in agony, you have some discomfort. It helps. Like, it really does. Like, you're like, look.
Definitely helps, Dan.
And then you think it, I'm like, am I really in agony? And I'm like, I'm not in agony. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's with a lot of things in life. We are like, or take totally away from that. You could be like, I'm so miserable in my dating life. I'm miserable. You can step back and go, am I miserable? Or am I just like a little unhappy? You know what I mean? Like, I think most
Dan,
of those major emotions, I thought, or one more example, which is like, I've said it with like, I'm not drinking or eating sugar or one of these things, like, oh my God, I'm dying for a drink. It's like, are you dying for it or you just want it a little? It's like, and once you focus on the feeling, I'm like, I just wanted a little, actually. And I think that happens with lots of things where you overreact, and you should tamp down those emotions for all things.
I think so. I think suffering and pain is subjective to begin with. We just talked about. But you can amplify it with these kind of emotions and this framing of it. So,
and everyone does.
I think it's pretty well accepted right now. I know it's like sort of psychology, and we've realized how it's hard to find good science and psychology, but I think it's pretty well understood that if a human is suffering, but he's suffering at the hands of somebody else that has ill intent for them, it's way more painful than if they were just suffering in an objective vacuum. You know what I mean? So if they had a rock in their shoe that just happened to be there and they're walking along, it would be hurt a certain amount. But if some evil person was
jabbing your foot,
jabbing their foot, it hurts worse.
I thought of that.
Yeah.
It's a good point. Like if someone smashes your toe with a hammer, you're like, you're screaming, but if you stub your toe, you're laughing. Right.
It's perceived as less suffering and less painful. And as far as the dentist goes, I was getting my teeth cleaned and it was a little uncomfortable. And I had the notion in my mind that, oh, this nice person, this nice woman is trying to help me and make me healthier. And then the perceived discomfort definitely went down. When I perceived them as helping me, then the pain and discomfort definitely subsided. And so all of that is subjective. And
all these things apply to so many things in life, right? Or if you picture good intentions from people around you, or at least neutral intentions even. Like if you have a boss and you're like, this person hates me, you don't even have to say they're trying to help me, but if it's sort of like, they don't hate me,
That's so interesting, Dan. I was thinking about this recently in view of the power of the tribe. So sometimes you get feedback from somebody who's competing against you in a broad way, and they kind of are your nemesis. They really don't want anything good for you. And that kind of can get under your skin, right? Like, this guy's got it out for me. And they could objectively have it out for you. But I found if I think about it and say, well, wait a minute, they're just in another tribe, and they're just rooting for their tribe against my tribe. It's perfectly natural that they would feel that way. It feels less personal. Yeah. And then it feels less painful and there's less suffering involved. Yeah.
Right. It's sort of like we've said traffic before, someone leaning on the horn when you did nothing wrong, and you automatically take it personally. But if you can rejigger it in your mind to like, this is a guy who does this all the time, I'm sure he's honking constantly, you feel better.
Yeah.
You know?
I was talking to Mark Ierardi about that just this week, just yesterday. And he was talking about in Thailand, people are beeping all the time and it's a super aggressive driving. But then if they come up to a red light, they all just sit there. Yeah. And they don't have a culture where if you beep at me, you're insulting me. We're being aggressive. It doesn't work that way. And I was in Costa Rica years ago for some time, and they beep down there for different reasons as well. Well, they'll be passing somebody, like they'll be dangerously cutting into oncoming traffic, and they'll beep, and the guy in front of them will hit the brakes so they can allow the guy to pass them. And it's like a hyper-aggressive driving, but without any personal animosity. And we're kind of the opposite here. Yeah. People don't want you to pass them, even if they're driving slow.
And they take it personally, and they think it's generated by animosity at some level.
Right. If you pass them, they take it personal. If you beep at them, they're like, how dare you beep at me?
Yeah.
You ever have that when somebody goes, what's the problem? I'm like, I didn't beep. Somebody else beeped.
Yeah. But, or the flip, which this is probably, everyone does this. You're in busy traffic and someone honks and you're like, what? Like you immediately think it's about you, though.
Oh, right.
You're immediately like, why are they honking at me? And it's like, there's 20 cars here. Like, there's probably someone honking at someone else.
Right.
You're sort of geared to
accidentally
take it personally.
Honked or something, right?
When I was in Rome, I saw lines in Rome. Like, there was a line waiting to get train tickets, and they just had this different norm of just barging in front of you. Like, they would just barge. Like, it was just a different societal norm. They would just cut right, like a little old lady just like shoved in front of me, and I'm like,
you're like, hey, no cutsies.
But like in such a way that it wasn't like seemed so weird to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like there's not a misunderstanding here. You just walked up and cut in front of me, and I'm like shocked. And then people kept doing it to the point where I was like, I'll never get to the ticket. You know, so then you find yourself adjusting, being like, I have to like body out this old guy or whatever, but no one says anything. To your point, like it's accepted. No one gets mad or starts a fight or says anything. They just sort of wordlessly jockey for position, and then you start doing it. Then you get to the front. Like, no one's angry. It's just a societal norm. But it speaks to like how your brain's working, where you're taking things personally, you're getting angry in all these situations. Like, I think we're just in a culture where any conflict or a lot of things in life you take personally, and you get worked up, and you get sort of you can get like overly introspective, and you can get like, I think a lot of us do that for a lot of things, all the way back to like the woman coming to the gym being like, someone like me joining a gym like this. And it's like, you're overthinking. Like you just have to barrel forward and stop worrying about these things.
Very good, Dan. Dan, I think we got some good info in, and we came to it. Definitely. So I think I'm going to recap. I'm going to do my best to recap.
Don't forget you talked about coaching, because
we talked about coaching, and we talked about pain and suffering and how subjective that is, and
the value of defining it in your mind.
Right. Making it less personal. Thinking that the universe is trying to help you, not screw you over, is going to be better. And to just Kaizen, just try to immerse yourself in the process and just move forward a little bit. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty good. Well, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Dimitri. Thank you, folks, for listening. And tell your friends, rate and review us, and we'll talk to you next week. Take care.